U.S. attorney, what you want you want the best attorneys you can have in there, and it really, I know you want to, like we said, appearances matter, but you want to win this case, and you need, like you said, it's harder for them.
The courtroom was silent, save for the hum of fluorescent lights overhead, a stillness that seemed to vibrate with anticipation. Justin Dyer Combs stood there, the weight of his family name, his father's empire, and the damning truths he was said to carry, pressing down on him like a storm cloud about to burst. Then, like a scene ripped straight from a thriller, it happened. His knees buckled. The sharp, hollow crack of his body hitting the wooden stand echoed through the room, freezing everyone in place. Gasps filled the air as the USB drive he clutched in his hand slipped free, spinning in a slow, almost deliberate arc before clattering to the floor with a sound more deafening than the audience's collective shock. It glinted briefly under the harsh courtroom lights, shining like a forbidden relic. And then, darkness. The cameras, the ones that had been trained on every inch of the room since the trial began, suddenly blacked out. Every feed, every angle, gone. The steady hum of the recording equipment ceased, leaving only the frantic murmurs of the crowd as a strange panic rippled through them. Someone screamed. Someone else called for security, and in the chaos, a figure, calm, composed, and eerily deliberate, rushed past the crowd, scooping up the USB drive with a gloved hand before disappearing through the side doors. Whoever they were, they didn't run. They didn't hide. They simply walked away, flanked by two other men in suits who moved with the precision of operatives trained for moments like this. By the time anyone thought to react, they were gone. The courtroom was left stunned, Justin Combs unconscious on the floor, and the evidence, whatever it was, vanished into thin air.
Actually thought that he was above the law, so I can only, think that, he was sloppy in the way that he did these crimes, that there's probably a trail of evidence, not only involving him, but everybody in his circle that he would, delegate these responsibilities to. And those people are when they're...
We have to ask, what was on that USB drive? What truth was so dangerous that someone would orchestrate such a brazen act in a federal courtroom, under the watchful eyes of the law? And more importantly, who has the kind of power to pull this off without fear of consequence? This wasn't just an accident. This wasn't a random act of violence. This was something else entirely. A calculated strike to bury the truth before it could ever see the light of day. Rumors have been swirling, and let's be honest, where there's smoke in Hollywood, there's almost always fire. Some speculate that the USB drive held the key to one of the entertainment industry's most whispered about secrets, the so-called freak-off vaults, hidden within Diddy's Miami mansion. Now, for those of you who haven't heard of these alleged vaults, let's just say the stories are chilling. According to insiders, Diddy's sprawling mansion isn't just a luxurious party pad, it's a fortress with layers of secrets buried beneath its glossy exterior. Somewhere inside, hidden behind walls no investigator has ever penetrated, lies a secret compartment, one said to contain recordings, documents, and other evidence that could destroy not just Diddy, but a network of the rich and powerful who've attended his infamous gatherings.
So Diddy, after the Cassie lawsuit, gets hit with a bunch of lawsuits, and then ultimately the raids, and then this criminal case.
Could the USB drive have been a piece of the puzzle? A digital breadcrumb leading to the vault's contents? Or worse, could it have been a direct copy of what's hidden in those vaults? If that's the case, it's no wonder someone wanted it gone. Because if the rumors are true, what's in that vault isn't just career-ending, it's empire-shattering. And let's not forget the allegations we've already heard in court. The stories of the so-called freakoffs, gatherings that have been described as anything but ordinary. These weren't just wild parties, they were elaborate spectacles, meticulously staged and recorded, where attendees were allegedly coerced, manipulated, and humiliated. All while the cameras rolled. Cassie Ventura herself testified that Diddy used these recordings as blackmail, holding them over her like a sword whenever she dared to defy him. "It could ruin everything I worked for," she said during her testimony. And if that's what he was willing to hold over Cassie, someone he publicly claimed to love, imagine what else could be hidden in those recordings. Imagine who else might be on them.
The feds, Al Capone style, have not charged everything under the sun. They've charged 3 main charges: racketeering, trafficking, and the transport of a And I'll tell you, I don't know about the racketeering charge. It's pretty sweeping. And I'll tell you what the general element.
And here's where things get even darker. There's a growing theory that the USB drive wasn't the only target that day. Witnesses in the courtroom have described how, in the moments after Justin collapsed, someone, likely the same figure who took the USB, made their way to the gallery where the legal team's files were stored. Could they have been looking for something more? Perhaps additional documents or devices tied to the mounting accusations against Diddy? Or was this a preemptive move to ensure no other damning evidence was left behind? Either way, the message was clear. Someone is playing a very dangerous game, and they're willing to do whatever it takes to win. But let's not forget the most unsettling part of all this, the attacker. Yes, that attacker. The one who, according to multiple witnesses, approached Justin moments before his collapse. Some say they saw a faint exchange between the two, a whispered phrase, a subtle hand movement, and then Justin crumpled. Was it an injection? A poison to drink? The possibilities are endless, and the silence from federal agencies investigating the incident has only fueled speculation. What's even more suspicious is how this attacker managed to leave the scene completely unchallenged. Witnesses describe how the individual was escorted out by unidentified men in suits who moved with an authority that screamed one thing: untouchable.
Centerpiece of a lot of what happened during direct testimony were freakoffs. And what the prosecution tried to show was that he forced and or coerced her into doing these freakoffs. And we've talked about this earlier this week, that at least my opinion is that in a lot of these, the prosecution just didn't close the loop. It was something she felt.
And here's where it gets even more sinister. Multiple sources have hinted at the existence of a fixer network tied to Diddy, a shadowy web of loyalists whose sole purpose is to clean up messes, silence witnesses, and ensure that the scandals never reach the surface. These aren't just bodyguards or personal assistants. These are people with connections. Real connections. We're talking law enforcement, judiciary, media, people who can make surveillance footage disappear, who can make key witnesses suddenly go missing, and who can walk a man out of a courtroom without so much as a single camera capturing his face.
They saw evidence in the case. They immediately honed in on racketeering, and they started saying, why is this racketeering with one guy? And they're charging this one guy. They had a real problem with that. They did not have a problem with the Mann Act. They found him guilty on the Mann Act. And they hung 6 to 6 on racketeering.
It's hard not to feel outraged. If this can happen in a federal courtroom under the glare of public scrutiny, what chance does justice have outside those walls? What chance does the truth have against a machine this powerful, this calculated? We're watching something unfold that feels bigger than just one trial, one scandal, or even one family dynasty. This is an unraveling, a slow, deliberate exposure of a system designed to protect the elite from the consequences of their action. And yet, there are still so many questions we can't answer. Where is Justin Dyer Combs now? How much does he know, and how much can he reveal before the same forces that silenced him once come back for more? What will investigators uncover about the USB drive, the vault, and the shadowy figures moving behind the scenes? And most importantly, how far will they go to keep the truth buried?
Today in a New York federal courtroom, Sean Diddy Combs told the judge he was, quote, a little nervous. The rap mogul's criminal trial began this morning. He is trafficking, racketeering, and more.
And then there's Cassie. Her testimony wasn't just a revelation, it was a gut-wrenching reminder of the human cost of this sprawling scandal. We've all heard whispers of the infamous freakoffs, but hearing Cassie describe them in her own words brought a chilling clarity to what they truly were. These weren't just wild parties for the rich and powerful, they were calculated, staged, and horrifyingly exploitative. Cassie told the court how Diddy would remind her over and over again that he had explicit recordings of her made during these so-called events. Footage she never consented to. Footage that he used like a weapon. It could ruin everything I worked for, she said, her voice trembling but steady. Make me look like I had no worth. Can you imagine the psychological toll of living under that kind of shadow? Day after day, knowing that someone has the power to destroy your life with a single upload or an anonymous email? It wasn't just about control. It was about erasing her humanity, reducing her to nothing more than leverage. Yet, despite the unimaginable pressure, she stood in that courtroom, faced her abuser, and told the world her truth. It was a moment of defiance, a crack in the armor of the empire Diddy had spent decades building. But even as Cassie's bravery inspired so many, her testimony also revealed just how far the powers behind the scenes would go to ensure the truth never fully comes to light. Enter victim 3, or rather, the absence of her. This missing witness was supposed to be a cornerstone of the prosecution's case, a voice that would allegedly confirm a pattern of behavior so damning it could have sealed Diddy's fate. And yet, weeks into the trial, neither she nor her attorney could be located. Federal prosecutors admitted it themselves. They had no idea where she was or if she would ever show up. Victim 3 had been ready to testify under her real name despite knowing the risks. So what happened? Did she simply change her mind, overwhelmed by fear or pressure, or did someone make sure she was no longer available?
The judge is hopeful that that could be concluded as soon as Wednesday, with opening statements in the case beginning next week and then the beginning of the evidence. So Combs has pleaded not guilty. He has said, his lawyers have said, that all of these allegations are the prosecutors trying to criminalize his sexual activity that they say was entirely consensual.
You know what you're thinking. It sounds like something out of a movie, a witness vanishing just as they're about to take the stand. But this is real life, and it's happening right in front of us. Could this be the work of Diddy's alleged fixer network? We've already heard whispers of this shadowy operation, a group of loyalists working behind the scenes to silence threats and clean up the messes left in the wake of his empire. But if these fixers are real, their reach goes far beyond simple damage control. They're not just scrubbing videos and paying off lawsuits. They're erasing people, figuratively and maybe even literally.
Let's talk about the filth that's starting to come out in the early days of the Diddy trial. This, of course, is P. Diddy. Surprise, surprise, he's a creep. Surprise, surprise, he's done horrible things.
Victim 3 isn't the first person tied to this case to vanish under suspicious circumstances. Sources close to the investigation have pointed out a disturbing pattern. Potential witnesses suddenly become unreachable, their attorneys go quiet, and any evidence they might have offered disappears without a trace. Even the federal agencies involved seem powerless to intervene, or worse, complicit in looking the other way. And let's not forget the surveillance footage from the courtroom blackout. How does an entire room full of cameras just stop working at the exact moment they're needed most? Are we really supposed to believe that's a coincidence? What's even more unsettling is the ripple effect this scandal has had on Diddy's family. While Justin's collapse and apparent rebellion have placed him squarely in the spotlight, his half-brother King Combs has remained eerily silent. King, known for mirroring his father's flashy lifestyle and aspirations in the music industry, has always been a vocal and visible figure. Yet, since the trial began, he's been noticeably absent from public appearances and social media, a ghost of the swaggering personality fans have come to expect. It's as if his once booming presence has been carefully muted, raising questions about what might be happening behind the scenes. Is this a case of self-preservation, or is King's silence its own form of complicity?
Unfortunately, we're all going to take a disgusting trip to his seedy, awful world. You know, the man has no class. He has no kindness in his dark, dark heart. And he's depraved. That's my opinion. This is a depraved, disgusting individual about whom I wish to hear nothing after this trial is done.
Combs' family has always presented itself as a picture of unity, a dynasty built on luxury and legacy. But this scandal has shattered that image, exposing fractures that have likely been there all along. Insiders have suggested that the family is now divided into factions, some loyal to Diddy, some distancing themselves entirely, and others stuck in the gray area, unsure of how to navigate the chaos. Even Diddy's longtime confidants, the ones who have stood by him through countless controversies, seem to be taking a step back, according to sources close to the case. If the empire is crumbling, it's not just the public watching, it's his own family too. King's silence is particularly intriguing because of how closely he's modeled his career after his father's. From the music, to the fashion, to the carefully curated public image, King has never shied away from being seen as Diddy's protege. But with these revelations, that connection may now be more of a liability than an asset. Could King's retreat from the public eye be a calculated move, distancing himself to protect his rising career? Or is it something darker, a sign that he knows too much and fears being dragged into the storm? Whatever the reason, the absence of his voice creates a deafening void, one filled with speculation and uncertainty.
The question is he a criminal? You know, is he basically akin to a mob boss running several criminal enterprises? And while it's very clear to me he is a depraved, disgusting person, we have to prove that he violated the law.
And what about the other family members? Diddy's twin daughters, who have largely been shielded from the public eye, are now growing up in the shadow of these allegations. How do they reconcile the image of their father as a loving parent with the accusations that paint him as a manipulative figure who preyed on others? These are the kinds of questions that don't just haunt headlines, they haunt families. And while Diddy continues to maintain his innocence, the emotional toll on those closest to him is impossible to ignore. For a family built on a foundation of wealth, fame, and influence, the biggest threat isn't just the trial, it's the legacy that could unravel with it. Generational wealth often comes with generational trauma, and the Combs family is no exception. The silence from King, the fractures within the family, and the growing distance between Diddy and those who once stood proudly beside him are all signs that this isn't just a legal battle, it's a battle for the family's very identity. And as the trial continues to unfold, the question remains, will anyone from the Combs dynasty step forward to address the cracks, or will the silence continue to speak louder than words?
And what's really going to be interesting is the parade of celebrities who we expect to be mentioned and or called into that courtroom. You know, people who we hadn't heard about prior, like Mike Myers, you know, Austin Powers, Mike Myers. Why is he getting called? Why is he on the witness list? That'll be fascinating. And then, of course, there are the no-name, quote unquote, women who are going to have to find every ounce of courage they have.
If we zoom out, it becomes clear that this isn't just about Diddy. This feels bigger, much bigger. What we're looking at might not just be the downfall of one man's empire, but the exposure of an entire system built on exploitation, secrecy, and unchecked power. Diddy is just the face of it, the figurehead. But who's standing behind him, pulling the strings? Who benefits from keeping these secrets buried? And how far will they go to make sure the truth never escapes? Which brings us back to Justin. His collapse in the courtroom wasn't just a physical event, it was symbolic. Was it the weight of his conscience finally breaking him? Was it fear? Or was it something else entirely? Some are beginning to wonder if Justin's dramatic fall was a desperate act, a way of sending a message without saying a word. Let's not forget, Justin grew up in the shadows of his father's empire. He wasn't just an outsider looking in, he was part of it, molded by it, maybe even complicit in it. So what changed? What made him decide to turn against the very system that gave him everything? Rumor has it that Justin had been growing increasingly distant from his father in the months leading up to the trial. Some insiders claim he had access to the vaults in Diddy's Miami mansion, the same vaults we mentioned earlier, the one said to hold the most damning evidence of all. Could Justin have been the one to copy that information onto the USB drive? Could he have been planning to expose the secrets hidden within those walls? And if so, what was his endgame? Justice? Revenge? Or was he simply trying to escape the shadow of his father's legacy before it consumed him entirely? Whatever his motives, one thing is clear. Justin's collapse wasn't the end of the story. If anything, it was just the beginning. Because if the USB drive was stolen, if those secrets are still out there, then the people who want to keep them buried are far from finished. They'll stop at nothing to protect themselves, their wealth, their reputations. And if Justin, Diddy's own son, isn't safe from the shadows closing in, then who is? So now we leave you with this. How deep does this rabbit hole go? How many more secrets are waiting to be uncovered? And most importantly, who will be brave enough to bring them to light? Let us know what you think in the comments below. Until next time, stay curious, stay vigilant, and remember, sometimes the truth is darker than we ever imagined. Goodbye and take care.